All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are pleased to present the first in our new Bold Business series with Uptown Waterloo. Tonight, we are going to hear all about For All Ice Cream with Ajoa Mintah and Tracy Van Kalsbeek of the Uptown Waterloo BIA. My name is Megan. I am a member of the program staff here at the Waterloo Public Library. I'm joining you from the Hartford branch tonight, and I'm excited to be your host. So tonight, for the agenda, we are going to do a brief land acknowledgement. You'll hear an introduction of our two speakers this evening. Then you'll get to watch a conversation with Tracy and Ajoa. And then at the very end, you will have a chance to ask any questions of either of our panelists this evening. So before we get too far, I'd like to do a brief land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. Waterloo Public Library is situated on the Haldimand Tract, which is land that was promised to the Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, and their contributions to our community. And I want to give a little bit of context to that land acknowledgement. So tonight I will introduce you to a member of our community who's Indigenous, and that is Brittany Luby. So you're seeing a picture of an Instagram account that she manages, which I will tell you about. So Luby is an Anishinaabe, and she's an award-winning researcher who specializes in Crown Indigenous relations. She seeks to stimulate public discussion of Indigenous issues through her critical and creative work. The Canadian Historical Association has described Luby's historical research as innovative in its structure and responsive to Indigenous research methodologies. She is currently the qualitative research lead on the Manoman project, which you're seeing, which is a research initiative focused on restoring Anishinaabe crops and revitalizing cultural foodways. Brittany Luby is also the author of 3 books, which are all available in the library's collection. So if you'd like to borrow any of them, highly recommend. So those books are 2 picture books, Encounter, and This Is How I Know. And more recently, she wrote the nonfiction book, Damned, The Politics of Loss and Survival in Anishinaabe Territory. So I will introduce our speakers. Tracy Van Kalsbeek is the Executive Director of the Uptown Waterloo Business Improvement Area, the BIA. She joined the BIA in April 2018 after 3.5 years as the Executive Director at the Stratford Perth Community Foundation. Tracy has also been a project manager for Manulife's philanthropy and sports sponsorship team, manager of marketing and communications at the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation, and program manager for junior achievement. Tracy is an avid volunteer and has been involved with boards and committees, many of them over the years. Her current positions include Trust and Council member of the Royal Highlands Fusiliers, member of Oktoberfest Advisory Committee, member of the Tour Star Advisory Council, member of the KW Community Fund Grant Committee, grant committee member for the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and board member and chair of the Waterloo Regional Tourism Marketing Corporation. Ajoa Mintah of For All Ice Cream is a professional engineer turned ice cream entrepreneur and the founder of For All Ice Cream. A university graduate, Ajoa earned her chemical engineering degree in 2001 and spent the next 16 years in various roles ranging from product development engineering in the automotive industry to technical consulting in the finance industry before pursuing her dream of becoming a maker. For All Ice Cream, which aims to bring joy of ice cream to all, regardless of dietary choices and restrictions, is the culmination of Ajoa's education, experiences, and above all else, her desire to create. So welcome, Ajoa and Tracy.
Hello, everybody.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Megan.
Right. And I'm going to hand it over to you two to have an excellent discussion tonight.
Absolutely. We're excited to begin, and we have such a great first speaker with Ajoa, and I'm so very pleased to be here and help to moderate the questions. So I think with that, Ajoa, unless you have anything that you wanted to start with, we'll just jump right into the questions. You good with that?
Yeah, that works. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So the first set of questions is around storytelling and personal experience. So can you tell us about your career aspirations when you were a child?
That's an amazing question, and only because I mean, for me, it was simply that I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was younger. No idea, no clue. So went through high school, having to make a decision in that last year of high school, and not really knowing what I wanted to do. I decided to go into engineering for one reason alone, which was that I felt that it was a path that would keep me flexible and would let me make that decision later. I knew that I enjoyed creating, and I felt that engineering would let me kind of continue to explore that. And I had an aptitude for for math and science, so that was helpful as well. But just for me, moving into engineering was a way for me to keep flexible and hopefully figure it out. And I specifically chose University of Waterloo because they had a co-op program. Yeah, and specifically because of the co-op program, I was like, if I don't really know what I want to do, then here's a program that's going to let me learn, but also explore what I would like to do. The other thing about engineering for me was that it really taught me problem solving. It was, here's a problem, here's how to solve it. And so for me, I was like, if I can learn that and keep practicing that, by the time I'm done, I should be able to apply it to anything. So I guess the short answer, or maybe the long answer to the question, is that I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I loved creating. I knew that I loved making, and hoped that I would end up there someday, but did not know when I was younger.
I think that's a great answer. And I think maybe you're on the way to coming up with a new engineering degree around flavor making or something like that too, potentially. All right. My next question is specifically and simply, why entrepreneurism? What about it attracts you?
I hate being told what to do. No.
Me too.
Yeah. I think it was a way for me to forge my own path. It was a way for me to explore my own ideas. And I feel like you have to have a lot of grit to want to be an entrepreneur. You have to have a lot of, you need to have, I guess, vision and not be afraid to kind of execute that vision, even when the path isn't very clear. So for me, it represents something just exciting and fresh and new. It's exciting to be able to kind of create something from nothing, or basically, move forward into a space that you can make your own.
Yep. Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I'm sure if you talk to other people that have started their own business, there would be a lot of similarities in the answers that they have there too. And yeah, nobody likes being told what to do. Not entrepreneurs anyway, that's for sure. Strike out on your own. All right, can you share a career experience that you had before launching your business that stuck with you? Something that maybe had some unexpected value?
Wow, that's a really, really good one. I think probably my first career, since I graduated, from when I graduated, was in the automotive industry. And the role was, it was product development. I was designing car parts. And so I remember just, there's a lot of time that I would spend, in analyzing, in like, will this work? Will this not work? And not necessarily doing, but just like in the thinking piece. I just had one manager who, was like, great planning skills, great, figuring out if it's going to work, but at some point you just need to do.
Yeah.
And that's going to be your best test of, will it work or will it not work? There's an element of planning, which is important, but the execution is really where you'll see. So I feel like, given my background, I was like, no, I got to analyze it to make sure it's going to be perfect before I start. But just giving that advice, that at some point you just have to you have to take that step. So that's something that I feel like I still carry with me, is that, I can overthink stuff as much as I want, and it doesn't really get me that much closer to anything. Sometimes you just have to, I'd say almost all times, you just have to do.
Absolutely. And I think we do our best learning when we actually have some failures involved in there too. And I'm sure that you'll probably talk a little bit about that during our conversation tonight too. Not saying that you failed a lot or anything, but just
I don't
we tend
know.
to do our best learning at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, next question. Oh, it's the next question. Tell us about something you tried that failed, and do you have any regrets about that?
I'm going to say I don't have any regrets about any failures I've had. And I actually I tell that to my team all the time, where it's, you know what, like what I often pass on to my team is that for me, it's not important that it's important to me that they try something, right? If faced with an obstacle, to do nothing is the worst thing. And even if the outcome isn't what they wanted, in trying, they're going to figure out what the right way to do it. So I'm just trying to think of a specific. It's probably maybe going to go back to, you know, the start of this journey for me, to becoming an ice cream entrepreneur. One of the first kind of challenges I faced was, I'm just trying to figure out how to frame this. So I had I started my business in 2016. You know, I found a commercial kitchen. I was, you know, I had figured out how to make ice cream. I had a chance to attend ice cream university, or I was on my way to do that, only to find out, it was like, you know, it was maybe 6 months invested as, you know, this is going great, only to find out that literally everything I'd been doing up until that point was illegal, not allowed. And simply because there's the dairy board, or I guess the dairy manufacturing of dairy is highly controlled in Canada and in Ontario. And so, although I'd been approved by the municipality to go ahead and make ice cream, the actual decision makers for my industry was the province. So after investing, you know, the time, the energy, it was like a hard stop. It was like what am I doing? Everything I've done is not allowed. And so, I mean, that definitely felt like a failure. Like I'd spent, you know, 6 months like working stuff out, figuring this out. You know, I'd spent some money. And so that just felt like a massive failure. But a mantra that I'd had since I started was, you know, I didn't know if all was going to be a thing or not going to be a thing. But my goal was to try every single day until I couldn't try anymore, until I'd exhausted every single like option to me. Because I just felt so strong about what I wanted to do. So in that failure and kind of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It was a question of, okay, well, the mantra is like, you got to wake up and do that next thing and do that next thing. So yeah, so that was, you know, that was to me a pretty big failure that seemed pretty epic. It seemed all consuming at the time. But at that time it was, you know, again, after I stopped crying, it was just a matter of, okay, this is the new obstacle. How do I get over it? So I, you know, called like the body that governs us is UMAFRA. And so it was a call to UMAFRA the next day saying, hey, I understand that there's a bunch of rules that I need to follow. Let's get started.
And here you are today. That's excellent. Yeah. I think that's a great example of something. Yeah, I can't imagine like 6 months and then it's almost like everything's shut down, and then what do you do? And then, but you figured a way through it. So amazing for you. What was the very first thing that you sold? Do you remember? Do you still have your loonie on taped on the wall?
I don't, but yeah, this was so I first started in Kitchener. I found a small commercial kitchen in the back of the old Bonnie Stewart building. We're actually still there today. That's where we make all of our ice cream. We've just expanded and taken over more and more space. And so the kitchen manager in that space had connected us with the Honer Avenue porch party. No, not the Honer Avenue porch. It was the Schneider Creek porch party. And so there was a community event, you know, down the street. And so they were like, we really want ice cream. We heard you make ice cream. So I rented a freezer. I don't think I even had a cart then. I rented a freezer for the day, plugged it in, you know, with an extension cord to somebody's backyard, made a bunch of little ice cream cups, and off I went. So the first thing I ever sold was a cup of whiskey caramel pecan ice cream, which is definitely one of our, like, I wouldn't say most popular ever flavors, but yeah, I sold a little cup of ice cream at a street party in July of 2016. My mom came to work with me. My kids were out on the street schlepping ice cream with me.
Yep.
My husband didn't sell ice cream, but he came and like helped me set up as best as we could. So yeah, that was the first thing I ever sold.
And a delicious sell too, for sure. And I love that little bike that you have now. The
Oh, the
yeah,
ice
we
cream
had it at the
trike.
market, the ice cream truck or ice cream bike. It's fantastic. It's so cute. Too bad you didn't have that then. It reminds me of the days of when I was a kid and the Dickie D man would come. They'd
Yes,
be
that's
riding. Yes, I love it. All right, next question. What is something that you wish you knew before you started a business?
anything. Yeah, I feel like I
Yeah.
didn't really know anything. All I knew when I started was I want to run a business. I'd like to start a business. I don't really know how to answer that question. So I just feel like to me, I stepped into an arena that I just didn't know anything about. And so for me, it was, I guess because I just don't have any regrets of what I would necessarily do differently. I feel like everything I've done, I needed to do to get to where I am. So
Yeah, you made the decision and you have such a can-do attitude that you just, as hurdles came along and obstacles, you figured your way through it. Is there any advice that you give somebody starting a business now?
I would definitely say, I mean, do some homework, see kind of what is and isn't allowed in your industry, reach out to others that are in the same space as you. And but I would say just start something, but start small, like, because I feel like it's not necessarily risk free. You have to kind of just, you also have to decide what your risk tolerance is, and kind of let that guide you, like, so you like know what that threshold is for you, but just start.
Yep, good advice. Do you think you'll always be in this type of business of selling ice cream, or do you think you might explore something else down the road?
I don't know that I'll always be an ice cream, but I feel like I'll always be an entrepreneur. I'll always, if it's not this, I'll be creating something else. I'll forge a new path if it's not this. But so far so good, and I don't see an end right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely been bit by that entrepreneur bug for sure. That's awesome. Is there a member of the Waterloo business community that you might look up to as a mentor? And you don't have to say me. I'm just kidding. I'm sure you probably have many.
There have been several throughout my journey. I remember when I first started and I knew that I wanted to enter the space, I made myself a list of who is doing something, that I admire. And a name that I came across was Dana Short. She had a store with her name on it.
Yeah.
She was a mom to two kids the same age as my kids in my neighborhood. And so I literally went knocking on her door to tell her about, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm thinking about doing. And, can you give me some time? Like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like anytime you can give me, I'm happy to take. So she was definitely somebody in this community that I admired, that I made it a point to reach out to. And I mean, and the conversation we had, it was just her sharing her journey and her story.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely somebody I admire in this community that really helped me kind of keep that fire going.
Yeah, for sure. I think she's an excellent mentor and role model for sure, especially women in business and stuff. And she sells your ice cream too, doesn't she?
She doesn't at the time. She doesn't anymore, or at this time she doesn't. Although we have had discussions about a collaboration between our two businesses.
Yes.
That I'm hoping to explore further. The pandemic kind of put a bit of a hold on some projects, but I feel that we'll be working together again soon.
Great. Sorry, and I think I cut you off. Were you going to mention somebody else?
I was just thinking through other mentors I had. So I did have a chance to go through ice cream. I went to Ice Cream University, which is a short course held at the University of Guelph. And so not relatively local. I'm going to take that back. It's relatively local, and it's not necessarily a business mentor, but just having, that Professor Goff was somebody that was helpful to me in getting started. And I'd also connected with one of his master's students who owns an ice cream shop in Denmark of all places. So just, yeah, so I feel like, collecting mentors along the way has been great. And I feel like for me, it's been great that my mentors kind of all come from different aspects of life, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. Is there a favorite part of your job that you just love?
Yeah, so these days you'll often find me at the Uptown Waterloo Scoop Shop, where I love that customer interaction. I love having people come in who maybe haven't experienced the joy of ice cream ever, or haven't experienced the joy of ice cream in a long time. And so to me, that's why For All existed. I somewhat joke to my team that it's just ice cream, but really for me, it's more than ice cream. It's being able to give that pleasure back to people. Just yesterday, I had a young girl come in who had never had a milkshake in her life because she has a dairy allergy. So I'm like, well, we can make you something that will be, perfectly safe for you to consume. And it's not less than, it's not an alternative to, it is as good as anything any of your friends are about to have right now. So that's my favorite part, is just being able to give that back to people, or letting people experience that for the first time.
That's awesome. I need to try this non-dairy milkshake now. I'm going to be popping by tomorrow. The last question that we have under the kind of personal experience is just a little bit, if you could talk a little bit about how you create boundaries within your personal and professional life. You live, breathe For All, but you've also got your family, your kids, your 2 daughters, and your husband. And is there anything that you do to help create some boundaries, or you just get everybody involved and there are no boundaries? And
yeah, it's an interesting question. I would say that those boundaries, it's something that I'm working on. I'm working on that. There's times when it's better than others, and there's times when it's not good. For me, like, working in a balanced way is challenging for me, because I feel like when I'm focused on something, I need to be doing that thing 100%. So for me, when it's family time 100%. And then when it's work time 100%. I don't necessarily do either of those things. Like, I don't do those things 50-50, although I would like to, but just, so for me, it's just being able to focus, so that if it is family time, even if it's 1 day a week or 2 days a week, that's the sole focus. For All doesn't get to hang out. But when it is For All time, my family's there. They understand where I've gone. I haven't really gone anywhere, but just I need to focus. And that's just how I need to work. I couldn't give half my attention to For All and half my attention to family. Like, when it's time for one, it's time for one, and the other one is going to wait.
it sounds like your family, they understand your passion and they're super supportive. So that's amazing.
I feel very, very fortunate.
Yeah. So the next couple questions are going to be kind of around the timeline of, like, when you launched your business and the evolution and that kind of stuff. So do you want to talk a little bit about what the evolution of your business looked like? You can maybe start from like the time that you launched it until the time that you took it full time.
For sure. So, when I first started thinking about For All, it actually just made a career switch, where I'd been working in the industry for a while, and I'd reached a point at a business where I'm like, I can't go any further in this business. And I tried to go further in that business for a while. And then just the realization that, I could work as hard as I wanted, but I wasn't going to go further in that business. So it was time to leave. And one thing that my husband had said to me around that time was, you're working for that company as if you own it. You don't own it. So, and what he meant was, stop working so hard. What I heard was, if I'm going to work this hard, it needs to be mine. And so I was fortunate enough that I was able to leave that business and give myself space to kind of think, well, what if I could do anything, what would it be? And for me, I landed on ice cream because it was an intersection between, it let me continue to be an engineer. I could create, I could create, and I could solve problems. And my background is chemical engineering, where we design processes. So I'm like, I still get to practice that. I used to live in Toronto, but now we moved to Waterloo, and, it let me embrace and explore what I love about this region. Talking, like, working with other food suppliers, like, 10 minutes in any direction, I'm at a farm. And then I think it was also just a passion, like just the passion for food, the passion for creating. So it was just like, this ice cream lets me do all of those things. And also looking around, I was like, well, nobody's doing craft ice cream in this area. And I also believe that this community this community supports entrepreneurs, and this community appreciates kind of craft food. Like, there's craft beer, there's craft coffee, there's farm to table restaurants. So I was like, this is the space that I want to be in. So, For All was an idea. And again, I was fortunate enough that I was able to kind of set aside everything else and focus on this idea. So for me, it's like, I'm going to make ice cream. But so right now we have a scoop shop, but that wasn't the original goal for All. For All was that we were going to create the best possible ice cream. And our focus is going to be, was going to be quality. And we're also just going to be, actually, when I talk about my ice cream, I say we're natural, we're local, and we're mindful. So we were going to make an ice cream product that only used natural ingredients, that sourced from this amazing region as much as possible. And that was mindful of, who needs to eat this ice cream. And let's make sure that there's a choice for those people. And so I set about, like, let's create this business. My first kind of major expenditure wasn't really in making any ice cream. It was actually, I worked with a small company, they're bigger now, basically to just make sure that my point of view was solid and I could convey it. So it was actually a company that helped me with branding, because I was like, it's just ice cream, but how do I convey what I want? Like, how do I convey what I feel about ice cream to others so that they get it right away? So that was kind of the first project, just to solidify the point of view that I had when it came to ice cream. And so with that, kind of figured out that this, I make ice cream and this is what's unique and special about my ice cream. It was kind of the stepping stone for me to move forward, that this was my point of view when it came to ice cream. So I secured a small space that I was going to learn how to make ice cream. And I was renting it literally by the hour to learn my craft. And I did that. And that's like when I did the Schneider Creek porch party and got people to try out my craft, and people really liked it. So I was like, great, I don't want a store. I'm going to, because that's not my area of expertise or interest, but there are other like-minded businesses in this community that, that appreciate good food, that have a customer base that want high quality products. So let me make ice cream for those businesses to sell to their customers. So the vision for All is that we were going to be a manufacturer and a wholesaler. And retail wasn't an interest of mine at all.
Right.
But when we applied for our licensing, we actually were able to get, we were allowed to have people come visit our retail or our manufacturing space, as long as no more than 25% of the square footage was used for retail. We could sell ice cream to the public.
Yep.
So I was like, well, let's, the space is there. And like the way the space was designed, that there was exactly 1/4 of the space that was partitioned off. So I'm like, well, let's turn this into the tiniest scoop shop. We'll see if anybody ever comes. It's in the back of a parking lot, down the end of a dead end, like the dead end of a street behind a building. Like, let's see who shows up. And if they do, great. And if they don't, we're here to really make ice cream. That's what we're going to do here. And so I was amazed that when we first started, and, we were busy making ice cream in this little space, we'd had so much foot traffic, people coming to the dead end street behind the building. And the joke was always like, oh my God, there isn't really space here. I thought my friends were joking, or, I can't believe that I thought that Google Maps is wrong. So we saw quickly, or I saw quickly that, despite being like in an awkward, hard to find spot, people kept on coming to this space to see.
You became a destination. It's amazing.
We did. It was incredible. And just people kept on coming, we had a big window so you could see into like the production facility to see what we were making. And to the annoyance of all of like our tenants, like our tenant neighbors, like our neighboring tenants, we were just bringing, people just kept on coming. So that's when kind of the business model evolved a bit, where, okay, it really does, we're still going to manufacture and wholesale, but let's bring an element of intentful retail into this business. And you were talking about our ice cream trike. So actually part of the models that I've always had an ice cream cart, but it was intended to be a marketing tool that, nobody's going to come to this weird spot. So let's have this cart so that we can go to people.
Mhm.
And so again, just the realization that, that cart was always booked. Our weird little spot at the back of the Bonnie Stewart building was always busy. That really led to, okay, I need to explore retail. What's that look like for us? And we had a few pretty good opportunities to kind of practice and see what that was like. So I had a partnership with Graffiti Market for a while where they let us operate an ice cream counter in their space. And they're experts. They know what they're doing very, very well. So it was a great learning opportunity to be like, okay, so this is what retail can look like. And when that contract ended, another opportunity came up. We had the opportunity to occupy space in downtown Kitchener. We did a summer-long pop-up. And again, so that really let me explore more of what retail could look like for us. And in that time, I decided that this was going to be the direction. So I secured a spot in Uptown Waterloo. And I'm going to say the rest is history, or I'm still writing history, but that's where we are now. But the beginning was really, and it still is the case, is that the goal is to make the best ice cream possible, to allow people to have that, to get that joy back again.
Yep. I was first exposed to your ice cream because I heard about you not at the first place that you're at, but when you did the pop-up in downtown Kitchener. And so there was a group of friends and we went down and checked out your ice cream. And I had the whiskey one at the time, and it was like, I can't believe how good this is. And I'm not even a big whiskey fan. So that was the first time that I had been exposed to 4-All. And I can't tell you, Ajoa, how happy I was once. And that was before I was at the BIA. And when I came to the BIA, and then you chose Uptown to be your more permanent home, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we got her to be up here. This is so fantastic. And even watching you just bloom through the pandemic, and the lineups that were at your store have just been amazing. I'm going to jump real quick because there's a question, and I think it kind of fits in what you were talking about, because you talked about how you'd worked with a company around your brand. And Nariman asks here, how did you pick your brand's name?
That's a fantastic question. And so, I mean, my incorporated name, because when I first started, is like, I knew it. I had this vision of, I'm going to make ice cream for everybody. So our actual incorporated name is Ice Cream for All, with the number 4 written out. And so, like, for me, like, in entering a conversation with somebody, I always like to have a point of view, but I also like to be open-minded. So, I had a point of view that I was going to make ice cream for all, and that's the actual business name. But working with this company and making sure that I was open-minded, they're like, we get what you're trying to do, but ice cream for all is kind of awkward. And so their idea was, let's invert it, right? It's going to be, what do you think of inverting it? For all. So your messaging is still clear that it's for all, or as many people as possible. And for me, the significance of the number 4, instead of writing FOR, but the FOUR, is that it's a way for me to kind of bring my family into it. Because we are a family of 4. And so whenever I'm curating flavors, like whenever I'm coming up with flavors, I've come up with what I call my 4 flavor personalities, or 4 flavor categories, because they fit every member of my family. So whenever we're coming, like a set of flavors for me, we'll have classic flavors. That's my husband. He wants flavors he knows. He wants flavors he's heard of. But we're going to execute that in the most, mindful way possible. Then I've got my childhood or nostalgia flavors, which is after my youngest daughter. She's definitely a child at heart. She'll be a child in my eyes forever, but just something, the fun and whimsical flavors. Then I've got our foodie flavors, because for me, I want something interesting that hopefully nobody's ever experienced as an ice cream before, but makes sense as an ice cream. And then finally, I've got my vegan flavors, because one of my daughters, I've got 2 daughters. My other daughter, just like dairy and her are not friends. So it was always that there's always going to be, an excellent vegan choice. And for us, when we do a vegan flavor, it's never a version of something else. It's the only, we have this flavor and it happens to be vegan. So like one of our most popular summer flavors is our chocolate brownie chunk flavor. It happens to be vegan. And we don't have another version that's not vegan. That's just the flavor. And so oftentimes people come in, they're like, oh, but that one's vegan. I'm like, well, if you like chocolate and if you like brownies, this is
You're gonna like it.
you're gonna like it. Exactly. It happens to be vegan, but that's incidental. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers the question as to how the name
I think
For
so.
All.
Yeah, you've got a couple reasons why it's called For All, and you talked about the evolution of that. So yeah, thank you. I think that answered the question perfectly. We're gonna have to try to keep things moving here, I think, a little bit, Ajoa.
Okay.
What time of year is slowest for your business? And I know it's not winter because I've seen lineups in the winter. I don't think you have a slow time.
It's very rare, but there is a small stretch. I'd say after Christmas, there's a small stretch from January to March where we use it to, come up with new ideas, explore new things, because we've got a bit of a breather to be able to do those things.
Okay. I'm going to move on to brand and marketing because we started to talk about it. So you've talked about why the name of your business, and you've kind of talked about the goal of how you are building your brand. Did you want to talk a little bit about the logo too? Was there anything there that you wanted to expand on with the For All, or that was partly through the branding process with the company?
Yeah, that was the branding process. I knew that. Yeah, that was definitely the branding process. Like even the colors of the brand, red's my favorite color, and I think the colors I pitched to that company was I want it to be red, black, and white, and they're like, how about this red, cream, and a bit of black. So I mean, yeah, so it was I feel like a very excellent execution by them, and something that I love.
Yeah. And when you're talking about marketing, do you do your own marketing support? Do you have an engagement strategy? Anything can you chat about on that?
For sure. So when I first started, and I mean, it's still our most powerful tool, I was like, social media is the way we're going to go. With Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I think at the time that I started, Facebook was probably the biggest thing, but Instagram quickly overtook that for us. And it's fun. Our images are, it's fun to take pictures of ice cream. We can make them look beautiful. So it's just a great platform just to be like, here's what we've got going on. And so I feel like by far, so we do our own marketing, we do our own photography. And we're primarily focused on social media.
Yep. Okay. So you talked a little bit about, the history and how the business came to be, and you talked about moving to Uptown Waterloo. Was there any research that you did to discover that you wanted to be in Uptown Waterloo, or was it an opportunity, or you talked about how you wanted to come to the community of Waterloo region because you felt that there were foodies here and that kind of thing, but why specifically Uptown?
Yeah, so I mean, I went to university here, and for me, like Uptown Waterloo, it's the center of town. It's a bit of a hub, and for me, I saw an opportunity. I was like, wow, like this space exists, and there's, I feel like I thought that it was a space that we could fit into. I thought it was a space that we could bring life to as well. Just like in terms of just increasing the vibrancy of the area. Just I love that people can walk around there. Like, so just to me, it was just like, I'm like, this is the spot we need to be. So when I started working with somebody to find our commercial space, I was like, I know where I want to be. I want to be in Uptown Waterloo. And he showed me some other spaces. I'm like, that's nice, but this is the space I want to be. And I remember at the time people were like, oh, well, that rent's super high. You probably won't be able to afford it. I'm like, I don't know what the number is. Let's do the work, or rather, I'm not going to say no to me. Let's go through the process and see what we can do. So it was Uptown Waterloo was a specific target because for me it's a hub, and I want to belong in a hub, and I feel like there's a synergy. I want to say there's a synergy between us and that area, right? I feel like we bring each other up.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I can't think of a better place for you to be either. And, I wearing my BIA hat, I suppose, when I say that, but you've just been an amazing addition to Uptown, and part of that, the whole I love about Uptown is that there's still a good mix of restaurants and retailers and services and stuff. So that really fits well. What you do really fits well with everybody. And the university students are, they come there all the time too.
The park is nearby.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, you're right there by the square. People love to sit on the picnic tables. And even when we closed down Willis Way there a couple summers ago, all the picnic tables were always filled with your customers. I remember.
I
Yeah,
love it. I
yeah,
loved it.
it's great. Can you talk a little bit about employees? Maybe how many you started with, how many you have, what do you value in employees?
Great question. So I hired one person back in 2017 when when I was ready to kind of go public. But I was like, great, it's gonna be me and her. I only need 2 people. We'll make ice cream, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we'll open up the store and we'll sell ice cream on the weekends. Which quickly proved like terrible idea, not effective. So I've got 2 groups or 2 groupings of staff. We have our ice cream makers, and then we have our service staff, our scooperistas, is what we call them in our Uptown store.
Yes.
And what I love about, I guess I'm going to talk first about maybe my ice cream makers, is that for me, I'm always looking for people that are passionate about what they do and that are kind of experts in their field. I'm not a food person. Like I eat food, but I don't necessarily make food. That's not my background. So they're mostly culinary individuals that are working in my production facility. But they love local, they love small batch, they love, they're into the quality aspect. I mentioned before that I had the opportunity to go to Ice Cream University. I've sent all of those staff to the same course as well.
That's great.
Just to further, again, it furthers their education, but it also just, it lets them kind of understand, like, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, which they already had, maybe not specific to ice cream, but just to kind of bring my love of ice cream to them as well. And then my scooperistas, there's a wide range. So I've got a mix of high school students and university students. And my university students come, they work for the summer, and then they go back. So that's why we also have the high school students, because they stay. They don't work as many hours, especially in the winter, but they stay. So for me, great staff, like, they have to have passion. They have to, and they don't have to have passion about ice cream, but they have to be passionate about something. Like, so a lot of my staff, they have other businesses, though they're really into sports, or they have a lot going on. And, we fit into that because they're able to bring their passion for whatever it is that they do to our business. I love people that are creative. I love people that aren't afraid to make a mistake. We've got policies and procedures. At the same time, stuff happens all the time. So the staff that do really well, the ones that they're happy to try, like, just, even if it's wrong, I love staff that are able to jump in, come up with something, like, and I think it's part of the entrepreneurial spirit that I value. Right. Is that it's somebody who's willing to try and isn't afraid to make a mistake. That's what I value in all my team members.
And I can totally get that in talking to you, and that you're looking for like-minded people and that are passionate. And yeah, and anytime I've been in your store, your staff are always phenomenal. So you can see that in all of them. And the fact that, when you encourage people to take risk and they excel because of that, and I think we see that in your people all the time. I'm going to ask a couple questions specific to For All. You talked a little bit just now about sourcing out your ingredients, trying to do that locally. Have you had any challenges with trying to get local suppliers on board or anything like that?
Not necessarily. I mean, I feel like a lot of the initial suppliers I reached out to when I first started, I'm still in touch with them and work together in some shape, way, or form. As we've grown, some of the challenges have been, being able to source enough of something. Right. But that's part of why we also rotate flavors. And we kind of figure out, okay, you can only get us a month supply of something. That's no problem. We will work with that for a while. So dairy is obviously a very important part of ice cream. And so we work exclusively with EB Manor. Mm-hmm. It's weekly orders, it's weekly deliveries. They drive down to Hagersville where their dairy is processed, and they get that for us every single week. When we first started, I don't know if you're familiar with them. They have their milk in glass bottles,
kind of like your jars.
Yes. Well, when we first started, it was us opening up like liter after liter of glass bottle. Now we're up into much larger bags. So in terms of the supply, I feel like our key suppliers, we're still with them, and they're still with us. And then there's just other opportunities. So for example, we used to work with Hurley's, and we still work with Hurley's. And I remember, approaching them when I first started saying, this is what I'm doing. I want to source, local, I want to source the best. What do you guys have? And so whenever I'm looking for a new ingredient, whether or not I get it from Hurley's, they're my first call of, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm trying to create. Who does this well? Or who would you recommend we talk to? Or who can you introduce us to? Sometimes they call us saying, hey, we just had, this farmer just had a crop of apricots, and, he can't sell them at market. Would you be interested in buying it? And I'm like, yeah, we'll do a limited run of something.
Yep.
And they're, some like misshapen ugly fruit. So like Trevor's been great that way, and that we think of him and he thinks of us.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's part of that whole craft food that you keep talking about, right? That you're able to do that, and people expect it, I think, too. I'm going to ask you two really quick questions,
Okay.
and then I'm cognizant of the time, and then there's a couple questions in the queue here from the folks that are on our call today. So first, what's your most popular ice cream flavor? I think you already said it's the whiskey one.
That's our most popular, seasonal flavor, or rotational flavor. But our most popular flavor of all time is actually our salted caramel.
Salted caramel. I do
Yeah.
like the salted caramel. And do scoop shop employees or the scooperistas, do they really develop a strong scoop arm, or is that an urban myth?
No, they do. They all leave at the end of the season. They've got, like, depending on whatever their dominant hand is, they've got like a wicked bicep.
Awesome. All right, so we've got a couple questions here in the queue. One from Alex. How do you work through recipe testing? When you first started your business, was there one combination that you knew would be an immediate hit? After all this time, is there still a flavor you're dying to perfect?
Great question. So for me, like there is a science to ice cream. Like, it's a careful balance of key ingredients. Like there's, we're balancing water, we're balancing sugar, we're balancing like other solids. So it's a balance. Like to me, every recipe is a balance of these properties that have to exist. So for me, for recipe development, I actually start off with an Excel spreadsheet where literally I'm trying to make sure that I'm respecting the rules of what's going to make it ice cream. The other challenge as well is that ice cream is actually legally defined in Canada. I can only call it ice cream if it meets, like, the milk, like the fat percentage has to be a certain amount. If it's below that, it can't be called ice cream. So I have to respect those rules. And then there's, after I start off with an Excel spreadsheet, I design it, make sure that, all those parameters have been met. And then it's time to taste it, because who cares if it meets all the rules if it tastes bad. So there's a lot of back and forth. Like once it's technically viable, then it's actually just going through like the organoleptic qualities of it, just to make sure that it tastes right, it has the right like smoothness, the right texture, that it's scoopable. So there's a lot of that happens in terms of the development. Sorry, and the last part of that question is
if there's a flavor that you're still dying to perfect. And I still have to go back to the organoleptic. Is that what you call it?
Organoleptic.
Organoleptic. That's a new word for me today.
So just making sure that kind of the senses perceive it well.
Yeah.
What am I trying to perfect? I'm going to say I'm still working to perfect our vegan flavors. So just in general, the balance is harder to get when you can't use dairy, or when you're not going to use dairy, you're making substitutions that don't necessarily work the same. So for me, I'm still working to perfect. I love our vegan ice cream. I love our vegan flavors, but like the base for that, I'm still working to perfect. So I feel like we can keep making it better.
All right. Next question from Jane. What do you believe are the greatest barriers for entry for entrepreneurs, and can you share any further ideas about what needs to happen for those barriers to be reduced or overcome?
That's an amazing question.
Mm-hmm. And she works for the BIA.
Yeah, that's a super question. I feel like, wow.
We can come back to that one if you want, Ajoa.
Yeah, we
think
might
about any
have to.
barriers.
Yeah, I mean, I've got like in term. Yeah, let's come back to that. But I guess, or maybe I'm going to answer that maybe in part. And I feel like one of the biggest, whatever the barriers are, I feel like one of the biggest ways to overcome them is honestly, it's to me, it's mentorship. I feel like people are willing to help, people are willing to offer advice, and so whatever those barriers may be, just matching, like acquiring the right mentors. And it might be a different mentor for depending on what the barriers are, but just mentorship is, to me, is the way. Somebody's gone through it before. You aren't the first, is what I would say to anybody. So it's finding those mentors to help you overcome it. And then maybe another, what I was going to say initially was maybe like just acquiring financial assistance to get started. But I don't like it. It is a burden. It is, or rather, it is a barrier. But I feel like it's overcomable. But again, I don't know. So I don't think I've answered that very well. But I feel like whatever the problem is, I feel like mentorship, having working with other people that have gone through it before is going to be the solution.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer too, because there are organizations like the Small Business Center, for instance, right, that will work with the entrepreneurs on helping them develop their business plan and then working through it and all of those things and providing advice every step of the way. So I think mentors is super important.
Yeah, and that's a resource that I used when I started, right? It's available, it was there, it was easy to access, and that they'd help me out. Like the accountant that I work with today was through the Small Business Center. The lawyer that I work with today was through the Small Business Center. So
right.
Yeah,
okay, no, I think you answered that beautifully. Steve has a question, and it is, what is your vision for the business in 5 years?
That's super. So our roots are in wholesale, like in manufacturing and wholesale. And every once in a while, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna, like, I feel like I get side railed every once in a while where people are like, you should totally have a franchise. You should have a franchise here. And I think I want to have a franchise, but then I'm like, no, I don't. So for me, in 5 years, For All is, we might have other retail locations, but our focus is that we're going to work on getting our amazing ice cream, the best locally sourced ice cream possible, at least across the country, across this country. I feel like we can do that without having, a brick and mortar store. And part of that is, just like how we started in this community, is that we approached other businesses with similar views about food, that that it should be as food should be as whole as possible, food should be as unprocessed as possible, and they do a great job in their communities selling to their customers who so that's the goal. In 5 years we're everywhere, but also still here in Waterloo with our little scoop shop.
Well, I think that sounds like a lovely place to be in 5 years from now. And I always think too, life happens when we are planning. And so, yeah, you never know too, that maybe you might be a franchisee, and you never know, right? But hopefully you'd still be the one behind doing all of the engineering and coming up with all the different flavors, because they just are, it really is, in my mind, the best ice cream that I've ever had. So it's very, very true. And I love the fact that you've got the jar program so that people can come in and get those filled up again too, and with their favorite flavors. And I love the fact that you can go in there and always try different things, and you respond to different events happening around the world. I remember like our Earth Day, I remember buying the green ice cream with it looked like dirt. I love that you're able to do all of that, and you are such a gem in Uptown Waterloo, and a destination, and we just love having you in Uptown. So I think there was another question that somebody, Bridget, put in the one question area about, as a business owner, how much time do you commit to your business in a day? If you wanted to chat a little bit about that, and then we can probably wrap things up. Yeah,
so I think similar to a previous question, which is this, I kind of commit however much time it needs, but something that I'm always working on is just that balance. Is that sometimes I could probably do it 24 hours, but I also feel like I drop from exhaustion. So as much time as it needs. But I'm still trying to define what that is.
Yeah, and being present, right? You're
Yeah.
present in the time, kind of, yeah. And then, but you're present in the time when you're with your family too. All right, I think that's probably the end of our questions, unless anybody else had any more. I have one little tiny question, and I don't. You probably get asked this all the time, and you probably, I don't know if you have an answer for it, but do you have your own personal favorite flavor of ice cream?
I do, and it's vanilla ice cream.
Vanilla.
Yeah,
I think that's most people's favorite too, is it not? Vanilla
I
ice
think
cream.
statistically it is,
Yeah.
but for me, it's my favorite because it's you can't hide behind vanilla. Like there's no, it's as pure as it gets. So Jim Eby of Eby Manor, that's also his favorite flavor because for him, that's that's as pure as it gets.
As pure as it gets. Perfect. Well, Megan, how are we doing?
We are doing great. I have to say, I really enjoyed your conversation, Ajoa and Tracy. Thank you so much for leading us with your bold business tonight in the first of our new series. I am a super fan girl of For All, and as you were speaking, I realized I was a patron at every location that you've had so far. So that
Thank
felt
you.
kind of exciting. So thank you so much for sharing your time. And we had some great questions too in the chat. I wondered, Tracy, if you wanted to give a little bit of information about the Uptown BIA for folks who aren't familiar with it. We heard a lot from For All, but not as much from you.
Sure, I'm happy to chat a little bit, do the 30-second pitch here. Uptown Waterloo BIA, Business Improvement Area. We're one of several around the world. We're actually the second oldest BIA, celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, for those folks that weren't aware. And BIA started in Canada, and just as a way to help beautify and promote the downtown core. And so we've been around since 1972, helping to share all the great things about the Uptown Waterloo core. And we help represent the different businesses. So we have about 450 businesses that are all as equally as great as Ajoa and what she's doing. And it's so amazing to be able to work alongside of people like Ajoa, and whether that is with helping to promote with marketing and advertising dollars and public relations, or even we had a night market last summer, and Ajoa was able to come with her. Well, you did come, but I forget the lovely young woman who came for you with the trike, and it's one heavy thing, holy moly! But it's so cool. So being able to do really awesome things like that and help promote businesses and creating Uptown as a destination, which Ajoa helps us out with greatly. So that's a little bit about the BIA, and you can visit our website if you want to learn about the different businesses and the different events and festivals and initiatives and placemaking that we're doing in Uptown Waterloo. Just visit uptownwaterloobia.com.
All right, thank you. And I think both Tracy and Ajoa mentioned like there are a number of local resources. So you've certainly got the Uptown BIA, the Small Business Chamber, and as we mentioned, Simply Analytics is a library resource. So I'll ask people for help, and surely you'll find some. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. As I said, it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Our next program in this series is going to be happening on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. With Hannah Marie of KW Headshots. So I hope that you'll all join us then. And if you did come for Simply Analytics, that will be happening on that day. So thank you and have a great evening, everyone.
Great. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thank you, Ajoa.
Bye.